Hello, everybody. It's Kimberly. I am doing today's Eternal Life podcast. I am an Eternal Life student, which just means human. And we enjoy learning from each other. And so we like to have different guests here. And today we have Eric Mehlenbeck. Did I say it right?
You did.
Oh, great. Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So happy to have you here. This is great. So today's topic is how fear holds you back, right?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, see, that's something too. That's kind of scary in the
Yeah.
background.
Yeah. There's
I'm
a
just
lot of that
teasing.
here,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
that's
And it'll get
okay.
louder and louder, and then it'll fade away.
No worries.
There it goes.
So,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about it.
I've sort of become a little more in tune with it over the last year, and just noticing how much fear tends to drive a lot of decisions, both in my life and in the lives of those near and dear to me.
Mhm.
I feel like most of the major life decisions I've made have been out of fear rather than out of something that I really wanted. For example, my first job that I got in New York City, I can reflect back on that and think, well, I was in a kind of a rough situation because I was quickly running out of money,
Right.
and I had bills to pay and student loans to pay. And the first job that I got, of course, was not ideal, but I had to take it.
Right.
But I was really scared. It was like I had to take it. But then, I mean, even jobs after that, that I was in a better place and had at least a financial cushion to rely on,
Mhm.
I was still accepting jobs out of fear.
Right.
It's like, well, I got to get out of this because I need to start making money again, and I don't want to eat through all of my savings. But yet at the same time, it's like this is probably not the best position for me right now. And
Right.
maybe if I just stick it out for another month, I'll find something that'll be more in alignment with who I am and what I want and what my actual needs are, rather than just taking it because it's on the table.
That makes sense.
Um,
Yeah.
and I mean, even some personal decisions, um, you know, uh, about where to live and who to spend time with,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and things of that nature. I think can also be driven by fear, just as in terms of this relationship. I need this relationship because if I don't have it, the alternative is scary.
Yeah.
I might, even though this person might not be the kindest person, but they provide something that I offer. And I suppose it is a little bit of that sort of give and take.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you start making decisions that are largely based upon fear, I think that uh, can get a little dicey. And it's just something I've been focused on, and something that I'm trying to work on personally and be more aware of.
That's really good. I mean, a lot of people have fears. It holds them back. I think fear is one of the biggest things that block people from moving forward, right? Because it's the unknown, it's the what if, and you kind of get
Right.
into your
Right.
comfort
Exactly.
zone, right? The comfort zone keeps you stuck,
Right.
because you already know what you're dealing with. It may not be the best, it may not be what you want, but you know what you already know versus
Right.
what you don't know,
Right. Right.
right?
Yeah. And I recently came across a really great quote. Ooh, so here's a silence that's going to have to get edited out.
That's okay.
Um, but it was attributed to Jim Carrey, I believe. And I should probably double check that because I'm not 100%
Okay.
sure that it was him. But he said something along the lines of don't let fear hold you back. And I am the living example of not letting fear hold you back.
Right.
Um, because I don't really know that much about him, but I can only imagine that it's like some of those auditions. It's like, oh, I'll never
Yeah.
get this. I'm too scared. Like this is not gonna be for me. And then going out there and just doing it, and incredible things happen. Um,
It's
you know,
so
I
true. It
yeah,
is, you hold yourself back and you stay in the same spot, right?
right. Yeah,
When
exactly.
if you just give it a chance, then you may go farther than you've ever thought, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think personally, I've also been, so I'm a graphic designer by trade. I
Okay.
went to design school, and I went to school in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I grew up.
Hmm.
And it's a pretty, Milwaukee is pretty, mid-sized city, I guess you would say.
Okay.
Um, so for that class, I was like one of the top students.
Oh,
And
great.
of course, then the teachers, all the professors and everything are very good at pumping up their students.
Right.
To
That's their
make them,
job, right?
their job, right? So
Yeah.
then, of course, I graduated, with, I mean, I've never been the kind of person to really have that big of an ego.
Hmm.
It's always been in check.
Right.
And I generally, I'm not comfortable there,
Right.
thinking I'm the greatest at whatever. Um, so anyway, so there's the kitty.
Hold on one second. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
He wants to get out. Okay, go ahead.
Uh, so
I warned you.
yeah, so then I immediately came out to New York City, where it's like, in Milwaukee, I was, a big fish in a small pond. So
Yeah,
then it's like you come to New York and,
changes
you know,
everything.
it changes everything. So I'm like,
Everything.
I'm the little fish in the
Hmm.
big ocean, and there's some really big fish swimming around.
Yep.
And like, I didn't even realize when I came out, like how, it's like you've got RISD, you've got Pratt, you've got SVA, you've got Parsons, you've got all these top tier art schools cranking out really brilliant students. And to try to compete against that, especially when so many of them already had connections that were built and even had internships that they were playing off of, and I had
Right.
nothing really. And it was a very difficult lesson to learn that, I, had to really struggle to get that first job. And then, I think that letting fear dictate the next few roles
Hmm.
really hampered my career.
Right.
My daughter's sneaking in.
Hi. We got everybody joining us. Does she need something? It's okay.
Um, you can get close from there. I'll just make sure that you're not on camera.
Tell her I said hi.
Yeah. Mommy told her not to come in here. So,
That's okay.
yeah.
I got my own. I'm expecting to pop in a minute, so we're good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, this is life, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So then I think I can even, it's like that job to that job. It's sort of like if you were to put that on, on a chart, you could
Hmm.
see that it sort of just like barely went up and across. And
Yeah.
that's kind of where I am. And then to see some of the people that, really took some chances and maybe took on some debt to be able to finance their lives, and
Yeah.
their careers are now like off the top of the charts. So,
Yeah.
of course now, 20 years, well, 16, 17 years after the fact of starting their career, and it's like looking back on that and thinking, if only I could go back and tell that, that
Yeah.
younger version of myself, like,
If you
don't be
only
so
knew.
afraid. Yeah, yeah. And I wish I could drive that a little bit better. And
You know
but
what? We all feel that. I wish I could go back and do so many things differently. That again, it was, I think, lack of education, just not knowing, not grown up enough, fear, definitely fear,
Mhm.
comfort zone. But you can't go backwards.
Right,
But at the same token, don't let it hold you back thinking about it,
right,
right?
exactly,
Got to start taking the next steps now that you know
exactly.
better.
Right, exactly. And then since it's something that I've become much more aware of over the past year, it's been something that I've been trying to be more conscious of in the decisions that I make, and trying to make
Right.
decisions that are, where I'm weighing that fear into the equation rather than just, I think a lot of the decisions that I made were really kind of snap decisions
Mhm.
done very quickly
Right.
without a lot of thought put into them. And largely because it's like, well, I'm scared of the alternative,
Right.
and not even stopping to think, well, if you're scared of the alternative, maybe it's time to take a moment to explore a little bit more about why I'm afraid
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah.
And, so that's definitely something that I'm looking at now much more, and trying to be a little more conscious of that
That's an important
in my
lesson for
life.
people to
Yeah.
understand. When you have that fear, some people, they want to run, they want to hide, they want to be, they want to be safe. But at the
Yeah.
same token, that what's the word? Face your fears, right?
Right.
And
Right.
the only way you can do that is to figure out, why are you feeling that?
Mhm.
There are times where fear is necessary to protect yourself, right?
Right.
But
Exactly.
a lot of times when you really look at it, it isn't as scary as you thought. You just had to take a look at the full picture, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Baby steps
Exactly.
almost. And you could say, oh my God, it's scary. If I resign my job, what am I going to do? But if you
Right.
say, I'm going to learn all these different pieces so that I'm ready and I'm prepared to move to the next job,
Right.
then that fear kind of subsides,
Right.
right?
Yeah. And then um I was just thinking while you were saying all of that about a position that I had that was in an environment that over time became very, very toxic.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where I was just like, I have to get out, I have to get out, I have to get out. And it was like, it got to the point where I think if I wasn't married and didn't have a child at that point,
Mhm.
that I may have gotten to the point where I would have said, well, I have enough savings.
Yeah.
I just have to get out because it's hurting me.
Yeah.
And, it was making me sick,
Mhm.
and, making me very, very irritable.
Mhm.
Um, I can remember so many times coming home from work, and my wife saying, well, how was today? And it's
Ah.
like, you don't want to hear about, because it's just gonna
Yeah.
bring up all that negativity, and I don't want to drag through that again.
Right.
And it's just gets to be that like impossible situation where is everything is so negative,
Mhm.
and um, it's just really, really difficult to
You
be
know
able to
what though?
process
It's
all of
it's
that.
good that you recognized it. You know what I mean? The minute you start to realize, wait a minute, my health is getting infected. I don't like going to work. It's affecting when I go home. Those are all big red flags warning you
Right.
something is
Exactly.
not right, and you have to take a look at it. It's one thing if it's temporary, maybe it's just a bad week,
Right. Right.
right? But if you continuously have that feeling, then something's going on, and you're saying a toxic environment,
Right.
that will affect you a lot, and that you're
Yeah.
at work most of your life if you think about it for a
Right.
majority of the
Exactly.
day,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
I think one more fear is responsibilities. Like you said,
Yes.
you if you didn't have your wife or your child, it'd be easier. And those extra responsibilities kind of make you stay in that safe zone, right? The
Yeah.
comfort zone, because at
Right.
least you could get through it, but it's not worth it when it's your health,
Right.
right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting how that stuff does start to manifest in your physical health.
Yes,
Um,
definitely.
I during that job, I started getting like a little nervous tick in my left eye.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Um,
Been
and
there.
I'm sorry.
I've been there. The tick in the
Yeah,
eye. I've done that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I even got to the point where I asked my eye doctor about it and
Hmm.
if it was a problem. And he was like, it's just stress, and you just have to work on trying to either mitigate that stress, or remove it from your life,
Hmm.
or just handle it somehow. Um,
What are some tools that you use to kind of relax yourself when you find yourself stressed out? Do you have
so
anything that you do?
I've gotten a lot better about that over time. I've found that a lot of times the best thing is just to total distraction.
Oh
Um,
yeah, that's a good
a good
idea.
a good story, a good movie.
Yep.
And usually it seems like uh, movies or TV is the best, because for me, because it's visual and audio, and
Yeah.
it's like a lot of times it doesn't require a lot of brain power. And
Right.
if it's a catchy or grabby enough story, then it can really suck you out of your own problems, and you're so focused on that, especially like sort of like the cliffhangery actiony kinds of things that work
True.
really well. Yeah.
You get
I
lost in your own thoughts sometimes, right? So
Yeah,
distracting yourself, read a book, watch a
right,
show, listen to
exactly.
music,
Yeah.
right?
So I think I tend to gravitate towards that when it's probably its most extreme,
Hmm.
just because I know that I can powerfully shift away from that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But if it's at a lower level, music has always been a big part of my life,
Yeah.
and that's just something that can really help.
Hmm.
So either playing music or listening to music, or just going for a walk and listening to music
Yeah.
really helps.
Definitely.
And you know, much like the movies, reading fiction can really distract and can really be helpful.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think also, and because a lot of that stuff is very tends to be very negative. So if
Hmm.
I start listening to or reading, listening to podcasts or reading um, content that is very uplifting,
Hmm.
um, that helps a lot,
It can
tremendously.
change your mood drastically. It's
Yes,
amazing how that works, right? If
yeah,
you're in the negative and you have more negative around you, it's just going to get deeper and deeper. But you start to put some of that positive around, and it starts to be like, okay, I'm feeling a little better, okay.
right.
And then you start thinking of, I'll be okay. It's not that bad, right?
Yeah. And something a podcast that I've recently discovered. I've been a Simon Sinek fan for quite a while,
Hmm.
but I discovered his podcast that's relatively new. It's called A Bit of Optimism,
Oh, nice.
and he is just so good about bringing in incredible guests to speak
Really?
with him, and it those conversations are just so great, and just really I highly recommend that his podcast to anyone
What's the
looking.
name of it again? So they hear?
It's called A Bit of Optimism,
Nice.
and it's in all the places where you find podcasts and all that stuff.
Great.
And Simon Sinek, it's Sinek, does have quite a few other podcasts,
Hmm.
and he's the one that wrote the book called Start With Why,
Oh,
which
nice.
is in it he basically says in order to find you know whatever you're doing with your life, your job, like he's talking about, well, a lot of people say, well, why do you go to your job every day? And
Right.
it's like, well, I do it because I need to make money. And it's
Uh-huh.
like,
Yeah.
well, that's a means to an end. That's not really your why.
Mhm.
Like, why do you do what you do? And it's like, why are we doing what we're doing right now? It's like
Right. It's an important
ultimately
question.
ultimately like we're helping each other
Mhm.
and ourselves, but
Yeah.
hopefully we're helping others as well.
Yes.
And so that's why we're doing this.
Yeah.
And hopefully what we do professionally and what we do to bring in money aligns with our core values as well,
Yes.
so that we can at the end of the day feel fulfilled. And you know ultimately, if we are not feeling fulfilled, then that's where it's time to make a change.
Yes. I agree. Definitely. I mean, a lot of times you find out you have more gratitude and fulfillment when you help someone else. If you're just
Exactly.
helping yourself,
Exactly. Yeah.
there's nothing extra.
Right.
But when you
Right.
help someone
Exactly.
else, you feel useful, right? You can
Mhm.
find your purpose, you could find your why. It's a great feeling. It really is.
Yeah. And I don't know if he went to. I don't think he may have gone to like AA meetings for research purposes.
Oh, great. Okay.
It's not exactly. I don't know if one way or the other, but he tends to bring that up a lot because
Okay.
Um, I have personally done, I stopped drinking myself about 5 years ago.
Oh,
And
congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, it'll be 5 years in September,
That's
which is
awesome.
about 8 days, I think.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
and I haven't been particularly involved lately, but for the first few years that I did stop drinking, I did utilize that a fair amount.
Mhm.
And one of the things that Simon talks about is just the sense of community that it builds. You know,
Yes.
that there's always someone there, and that one of the big pillars of Alcoholics Anonymous is being able to help others,
Yes.
being able to share your story, and hopefully others can benefit from it. And that was exactly what I really loved about it, is just
Yeah.
being able to help others the
Mhm.
way that others were helping me. And that sense of community that's built is like if you're struggling, if you're having a hard time, there's always someone there. So you
Yes.
don't have to go through it alone.
Exactly.
Always reach out to others. And before I started doing that, I was very good about, well, very awful about going inwards and
Okay.
not reaching out to others and dealing with everything on my own.
Right.
And particularly, before I lived with before I got married and before
Mhm.
my daughter, I lived alone for quite a while. And it was just so easy to just, go home at night or whatever, and spend the evening alone and not speak
Mhm.
with anyone. And there were times where I remember there were weekends where I was really struggling, and not going out and holding up and not reaching out and saying, hey, can you help me? I'm really not feeling very well
Yeah.
emotionally, and can you help me,
Mhm.
because I just need someone to talk to about this.
Yeah.
Can you share maybe some of your own experiences around this, or what do you do when you're struggling with this?
Yeah.
And of course, we were talking a little bit earlier about how we wish we could go back in time and
Yeah.
tell our previous versions of ourselves about that.
Mhm.
And I definitely wish that I could do that now, because
Right.
there were some pretty miserable weekends that I just basically hid out by myself.
Yeah.
And I wish that I would have reached out to friends and just said, hey, let's go see a movie together,
Mhm.
and then get coffee afterwards and talk, or get dinner or whatever, and
Yeah.
talk about what I'm dealing with this, and it's really awful. And I it's always great to hear others reach out and see them reach out.
Yeah.
And one of the great things, since we met on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
is seeing the amount of people that are sharing that kind of stuff on LinkedIn,
Yes.
and just saying, it's like, I've had a really bad day at work.
Mhm.
These things have happened. Um, and I may need some help, and I may be reaching out to specific individuals,
Yeah.
which I think is great. And but another thing that Simon Sinek does mention is it's so easy to blast something out on
Right.
social media and just say, like, hey, like, I'm struggling with this, and then just leave it at that. And
Yeah.
that's not really reaching out. And he makes a big point of, like, some people are thinking that that's enough,
Right. They're
whereas
saying
it's
it, but they're
not.
not they're
Yeah,
not fixing it. They're just
right,
pouring it out.
right,
Right?
exactly. It's just
Yeah.
being poured out, and some people may comment on that post and say,
Mhm.
I'm sorry that you're dealing with this, but there's no actual connection that's being made, and there's
Correct.
no work that's being done to
Right.
try to remedy that situation. So while that is a great resource, but
Mhm.
I think the it's just like any other medium of communication. Uh,
You need two-way,
yeah,
right? You need two.
yeah, yeah,
If you're just
exactly.
talking out there and people
Right,
are
right.
listening, there's no real
Yeah. And
connection.
if there's a little bit of response to it, that's still not enough. It's not that human connection. It's not that human dialogue.
Yeah.
Nothing is really being solved. So I
Right.
think that that's where that dialogue really comes in,
Yes.
and where reaching out to others is very, very important.
Okay,
And
so question for you.
sure.
What if a person is shy and they're not comfortable reaching out? Do you have a suggestion for them to how they should reach out? Like that person who's sitting home by themselves instead of going out.
Right.
You know
I
what I
think
mean?
that, yeah, and I think that because I can remember my former self, like, I would not reach out.
Right.
And I didn't ever. And I think that that can be kind of tricky because also I wasn't really paying attention a whole lot to, um, I wasn't making phone calls. I wasn't reaching out to people.
Right.
So it's kind of tough. Like I was really insulating myself. Um,
Did you find it through AA? Is that where you found
I think that's
people?
really where that began.
Or was it
And
other spots, you know?
I think it really started there.
Okay.
Just because people, one of the big parts of that is to check in with people to see how they're doing.
Good.
And so I think that's where it started. It's like, it can just be a text message to someone
Yeah.
like, hey, how are you doing?
Yep.
And I think by starting to practice that
Hmm.
when you're at a good spot and just reaching out to your friends and just saying, like, hey, it's Saturday, I just wanted to see what you've got going on, like how you're doing.
Right.
Hopefully you're doing well.
Hmm.
And always feel free to reach out to me if, regardless of whether things are good or bad. uh,
I've seen a lot more things like that. A lot of people have been trying to put out there to say, hey, I'm here if you need to talk. Where before nobody would have said it. It would have been silent.
right,
I think
right,
it's more open now. People are
yeah,
recognizing it, and they're saying, hey, I'm here. Even
yeah,
total strangers are saying, don't do anything, if you're upset or whatever, call me, here's my number. And they don't
right,
care who it is. Just
right,
right,
yeah.
which is
And I
wonderful.
Yeah, and I think, obviously COVID is horrible and devastating and has hurt so many people and taken so many lives. But the upside of it is that people are more willing and able to reach out and more cognizant of people in their lives, that it's like we need to make sure that everybody's okay because
Yes.
not only could they be struggling with, just having a bad week or something like that. You never know if someone who lives alone might be sick
Right. No,
and
it's true.
they may need help and they may not be able to reach out because they don't have the energy to.
Yes.
And while, COVID really sapped people's energy, being sick, like I can
Mhm.
remember years and years ago, I had a case of the flu over the weekend, and
Right.
I remember dragging myself to
Oh,
the
wow.
local CVS to pick up some, I don't know what I was looking for,
Right. Your
Tylenol, flu,
medicine,
or
right? Yeah.
whatever medicine. I was looking for some ice cream to help soothe my scratchy throat or
Aw.
whatever.
Yeah.
And, walking down the aisles and thinking, wow, I almost don't have the energy to make it to the end of this aisle. Like, how am
Hmm.
I gonna make it the block and a half home
True.
after that?
Yeah.
And so I think there were a lot of people that were found themselves in that situation where they were just feeling so physically miserable that
Hmm.
they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Yet on the flip side of that is mental health can be just as debilitating.
True.
And, I had, connected with people over time. And I can remember some people saying that, when they lost their job,
Mm.
that, it just got to be so horrible that
Yeah.
it's like rejection after rejection after rejection.
Yeah.
And I think another thing, before I go too far off on a tangent, is that searching for a job has become a lot different over even the last 5 years than it
Yeah.
was before that. But just to be aware that people are really struggling, and
Hmm.
you know, if you are aware that someone close to you or in your circle has lost a job
Hmm.
and they may be living on their own, that
Check
check
on
in with
them.
them often,
Yeah.
because it can be really hard,
Yeah.
and especially if they're living kind of close to the edge.
Hmm.
I saw a stat somewhere, when I was living in California, that it was like 8 out of 10 people
Hmm.
living in the county, and overall it was a very wealthy community,
Hmm.
um, that they didn't have $4,000 in savings.
Right. A lot of people
So
don't.
if something major happens and they need, say, seven, eight, nine, $10,000,
They're
they're
trapped.
in a world of trouble.
Yeah.
And they probably don't have people to reach out to say, hey,
Mhm.
I need help.
Right.
And, traditionally throughout time, like, for me personally, I was raised in the Midwest and sort of that Midwestern mentality, like, oh, I've got this, like, I don't need any help. I can do
Yeah.
this. But it's like, it's okay. Like, admit that you need help, reach out to people and say, hey, like, I'm really not doing well right now. I just need someone to talk to, or, asking for money is
Mhm.
always like,
That's a
like,
big one. Yeah, people
yeah,
get
like you can't do that.
right.
Like, but like there are people out there that can help you. And it's like, reach out to people. And while they may not be able to help you, they may know of resources
Ex-
that you can reach out
Exactly.
to,
Yeah.
or say like, you know, I can't help you personally, but
Mhm.
I know that a friend of mine does have some savings that
Right.
they would be able to help you with. And as long as it's going through me, like I'll be able to help make sure that you're able
Hmm.
to repay them properly. And,
Right.
we'll have to figure out some kind of interest payment, but
Mhm.
just to make it fair.
Right.
But yeah, I think all
I
those
mean, it
things
could
are
even be
definitely doable.
food. It could just
Right,
be, yeah, it
exactly.
could be food, it
Yeah,
could be clothes, it could be a
right,
ride,
exactly.
like
Yeah,
those little things that you're taking for granted you have that
right.
somebody else, they don't have it and they're afraid to ask.
Yeah, yeah,
But if you check in
exactly.
with them, get them comfortable and realize that, hey, I've got extra food. You want some food?
Yeah,
Or, something as simple as that. I made an extra pie,
yeah. Or
that's,
even like, hey, I'm going to the grocery store later
yeah.
this afternoon. Why don't you come with me and I'll cover your bill?
Yeah, that type of thing. I have some friends. They purposely will buy random strangers food,
Yeah,
coffee, a sandwich, things like that, where because they can, and it's something they know that they need, you know.
yeah, yeah,
So that little bit just shows, it gives hope. It
yes,
shows that other people care, you know.
yeah,
And I think that's a very big thing. I think a lot of people are starting to get more comfortable talking, and they're slowly asking for help.
mhm,
Like you said, I think everyone's trying to build their own little community,
yeah,
right? And I think that's
yeah,
that's wonderful, because alone you may be strong, right? I always say this: you could be a strong person alone. You're like, I got this, I can handle this. But
yeah.
with other people, you're stronger, and you can help
Right,
each other,
exactly,
right?
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly, yeah. That's
definitely.
so spot on. Yeah, and then since you mentioned hope, I think that's, for a lot of people, that's something that's kind of can be lacking.
Yes.
And being able to reinstill that sense of hope
Mhm.
is so helpful.
Yes.
It's like, well, now that I've got the right shoes, I
Yeah,
can get this job. And
exactly.
where is it going to take me from there? And it's like,
Yep.
and then I will be able to pay off my credit card debt
Correct.
and my student loans. And then
Yes.
that'll get me out from under all that. And then I'll be able to do all these other things.
Yep.
And
Step
I
by
think
step.
that's, yeah,
Right.
it's just like once you start seeing that pathway, hope can be really, really strong.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I'm going to wrap up our conversation.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, thank you so much for being with us today. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. This is a very important message. I think we had a couple messages in there. Uh,
Yeah.
it's not just about how to face your fears, right? But it's about communication, working
Mhm.
together, having hope, right? And
Right.
staying positive.
Yeah.
And anything is possible, right?
Yes.
As long as you
Anything
put
is
in the work.
possible.
Yes.
Right. Exactly.
So
Yeah. So I
I'm
just wanted to say thank you so much for having me as a guest. I really enjoyed this. This was
oh great.
a lot of fun, and it was hopefully that others will benefit from this conversation as well.
Definitely. I would love to have you back. Oh,
Great.
my friend Thomas couldn't be here today, but maybe we'll have
Yeah.
another podcast event where we'll have a bunch of people, and we can share more thoughts.
That
Okay.
sounds great. Thank you.
So I'm gonna say thanks again, everybody, for coming. And we are Eternal Life students, where we learn from each other. And we hope that you have a wonderful day. Peace be with you. Take care. Okay. Let me stop.